What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Ratch Report. It's time to talk about the Toronto Raptors because Pascal Siakam has been a name that we keep hearing so many rumors about. And we've got another Eastern Conference team that has been linked to Pascal Siakam. So for today's video, I'm going to be taking a look at both teams, what potential pieces could be moved, and if the team that is being linked to Pascal Siakam should make this trade. So if you're ready to watch this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. And if you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that would be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs on my channel, and the shout out for today's video goes out to 3D Design Prints. So thank you so much for supporting this channel. Through your likes and comments, it is very much appreciated. And this was being reported by Adrian Wojnarowski that I believe the Pacers will continue to be a team that probes on Toronto's Pascal Siakam. This was on Threads again, and he was being asked, as he normally does on Threads, whether or not, if there's certain teams and what the Pacers will do. And he responded by saying this. Now, I do want to constantly mention that with respect to Adrian, with respect to Shams, no one really predicted the New York Knicks coming on top, right? Like even when the Raptors drafted Scottie Barnes, they were predicting each draft pick, but then they weren't able to predict who the Raptors were going to draft. So the Raptors are always a team that makes deals when you least expect it, and it happens to many people's surprise, and including the team that is involved. But it is always fun to talk about rumors, and let's take a look at the Indiana Pacers roster here and talk about the Pascal Siakam trade and what pieces could be going the other way. Now, taking a look at the Indiana Pacers roster here, Pascal Siakam makes a lot of sense for this team. As good as Tyrese has been this season, and as pleasant as the Indiana Pacers have been, they definitely need defense, and they also need some support for Tyrese Halliburton as well. Now, when you take a look at salaries, Pascal Siakam's making about $38 million. So there's certain names you would absolutely have to include in this deal to make the money work. Right away, you have to think of someone like a Buddy Hield. He's an expiring contract that's making $19.2 million this season. Obviously, some of the other names that have been linked are Benedict Mathurin, Obi Toppin, Juris Walker, even names like Jalen Smith has been thrown around as well. Now, in terms of the money and players, I do want to say, I know from a fan's point of view and even a management's point of view, you look at some of the young guys, and of course, you don't want to give up all of your young guys in a deal for Pascal Siakam because as good as he is, he's an all-star player, he's an all-NBA player, but he is not a superstar. But I do want to reiterate one thing when I constantly talk about, trading for all-stars comparing to superstars and even teams that will, or excuse me, players that will help you take your team to the next step. Now, I think the goal for the Pacers should constantly be that you should look to increase your team's accomplishments and your success and slowly build upon that. Again, the Indiana Pacers are having a nice season, but I do want to say Buddy Hield is an expiring contract. I want to take a look at the salary situation for the Pacers one more time here. As you see there, next season, they're locked in for $128.7 million. You got Tyrese's new contract kicking in, and a lot of people will be looking at this and, looking at the contract situations and say, well, the Pacers aren't necessarily in a hurry because they've got Tyrese locked in for 5 more seasons following this season, and he's only 23 years old, and they are a young team overall. One thing I do want to state is that Tyrese has come out and stated that he wants to win. Although he may be 23 years old, the NBA moves very, very quickly. If the Pacers don't make a big move within the next 2 to 3 seasons and they constantly are a first-round exit team or just barely making the playoffs, then you can bet Tyrese may just very well request a trade. I think people need to keep that in mind, that having a 23-year-old doesn't necessarily give you 5-6 years to build a roster around him, especially with star players, especially with all-star players. They get frustrated very quickly, and we know what happens when they ask for a trade. What other team knows is better than the Pacers that, Paul George wanted to go to LA. So again, I think when you talk about Pascal Siakam and, whether you should trade for Pascal or a star in the near future, you need to keep in mind that not a lot of players want to come to the Indiana Pacers. Like even if they do have salary cap and money to spend in free agency, not a lot of players, are looking to come to a small market like the Indiana Pacers. Another thing I like to mention is Buddy Hield's contract. He's an expiring contract. So look, he's making $19.2 million. His new contract is probably starting at around 23 to 25 million at the very least. He's also 31 years old as well. So again, it's not necessarily a bad thing that when you do move off of someone like a Buddy Hield, you are moving off of an expiring contract. Same thing with Obi Toppin as well. His new contract is probably going to be 10, $12 million plus. So again, I understand where fans may be coming from that you don't want to necessarily trade someone like a Jarvis Walker or Benedict Mathurin, but ultimately, whenever you're doing a trade and you're getting the best player in return, you do need to keep in mind that you're getting a sure thing. Pascal Siakam is an all-star. He is an all NBA player. You know what you're getting in Pascal Siakam. It's not a hit and miss. You know he's going to produce. You know he's going to do a lot of things that the Pacers could definitely use, including rebounding. Like when you take a look at the stats here, you'll notice that the Indiana Pacers are the second worst rebounding team in the entire NBA. They rank 29th in the NBA, averaging only 40.5 rebounds per game. So Pascal definitely checks a box in that department as well. So I mean, I think the goal for the Pacers right now should be, you know what, acquire Pascal Siakam sooner rather than later. Kind of what the Raptors did. Like you see what the Raptors did by trading OG early. It kind of gives you a chance to look at your roster, also give the new guys some time to incorporate it into your offense and your team overall, and give this team a longer period of time to overall just see how this team is playing all together. And also because I know it's a small sample, but the Raptors offense looks completely different with RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly. And, you know, Pascal Siakam seems like a seamless fit there as well. So if the Raptors continue to win games, maybe the Raptors ultimately decide they do not wish to move on from Pascal Siakam. Now, taking a look at this from a Raptors point of view, it's always fun because we have to obviously talk about Scotty Barnes and other factors as well when we talk about the roster makeup. Now, taking a look at the Raptors salary cap situation here, the one thing that a lot of fans and, of course, management is worried about as well is paying Pascal Siakam a ton of money on his new contract, especially now that you've got RJ Barrett making a ton of money, but you also are going to have to pay Emmanuel quickly, likely in the 23 to $25 million range as a starting point. So again, it becomes a very, very difficult situation for the Raptors where you're paying, you know, Pascal Siakam a ton of money. There's going to be a lot of arguments made that he's aging closer to 30s, but I do want to say one thing. Like when we talk about we had a lot of fans say that, you know, the Raptors should absolutely rebuild around Scotty Barnes. Again, I want to see one thing kind of similar to Scotty Barnes and Tyrese. Like Tyrese is 23, Scotty Barnes is 22, but we know they're not your normal 22, 23-year olds. Their game has accelerated way past the point where, you know, they could probably be two of the best players on your team, right? So again, acquiring picks, acquiring young players is always a challenge because it's going to take them several years to develop. Same thing with the Pacers. You know, I forgot to mention this regarding Tyrese Haliburton. When you're taking a look at Jarvis Walker, you know, he seems to be doing really well in the G League, but likely he's going to take 2 to 3 years to fully develop. And Benedict Mathurin, as good as he looked last season, he hasn't looked great this season. And what if he's a good starter but never an all-star player? So those are some of the things you need to think about from a fan's point of view when we talk about trading for Pascal Siakam. This is a legitimately 20 points per guy, 8 rebounds per game, 5 assists as well. So I think he would fit in perfectly with the Pacers. And ultimately, I do this trade, even if it includes trading Jarvis Walker and Benedict Mathurin. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a Raptors fan. I think there's a lot of mystery around Jarvis Walker. You're also getting rid of expiring contracts as well, which you're going to have to pay or either lose for nothing, right? So again, I want to reiterate that I think with a lot of younger players, people feel like they have a lot of time to build around. The new NBA is very different from what we saw with, you know, Kobe Bryant's, even heck, even LeBron James, you know, he didn't change teams until he was 27. So I think the thing with a lot of younger players is frustrations can happen. We know players talk to each other all the time, and there's certain teams they want to go up with to pair up with their friends. So again, if the Pacers continue to just have Tyrese on there, their offense looks great, but their defense isn't, right? So from the Pacers' point of view, I say you go for it. I mean, you can make this trade work. You get Pascal Siakam. You also get his bird rights as well, and you can sign him to that new contract. While I understand there's going to be some concerns about, you know, potentially Pascal Siakam not wanting to re-sign with you, look, I've talked about this in my last video. Like he's not signing with the Detroit Pistons, guys. They have a lot of ton of money to spend, but you can't see Pascal Siakam going to a team like that. So again, I think it's a smart move from the Pacers. From the Raptors' point of view, I think it's one of those situations as well, right? Like you get Benedict Mathurin, and he would be a nice fit, and you know, Buddy Hield and all those guys as well. But then again, you're spending a lot of money to re-sign Buddy Hield, right? Benedict Mathurin would be amazing. Don't get me wrong. Jarvis Walker would be great as well, but it's ultimately, if you have something good going at the moment, don't screw it up in hopes of having something better. the grass always seems greener on the other side. So that's all I've got to say in terms of that. I mean, don't get me wrong, that's a great deal. And if the Raptors do get that deal, I think they should accept that offer. But I think if the Raptors continue to win games and Pascal Siakam and Scotty Barnes in the last 10 games or so, they just seem like they're gelling so much. And with RJ Barrett and Emmanuel quickly now, the chemistry seems to be forming a little bit. I know it's only 2 games and they are 2-0 in those 2 games, but the offense looks so much better. It seems to be flowing. And in some ways, almost when you look at Scotty Barnes and Pascal Siakam, they're almost a yin and yang. They complement each other very well because Scotty is a stronger defender than Pascal Siakam, but Pascal Siakam is a better ISO scorer than Scotty Barnes. So in some ways, they take the pressure off each other, which is great to see. So again, that's my thoughts on this. I know people are going to say the Raptors should move on from Pascal Siakam. I think they should keep him around for the time being and definitely re-sign him as well. Again, as I highlighted in my last video, I'm going to mention this one more time. There's so many other contracts like Gary Trent, Thaddeus Young, Chris Boucher, Otto Porter Jr., like players like those 4 players combined are making $38 million. So that's some of the salaries that you need to shed and then sign Pascal Siakam. I think people are focusing their attention on the wrong player, and there's definitely other salaries that you could get rid of to create cap space if the Raptors do need to. So again, I'm very curious to hear what you guys think. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And that trivia question is, since we've talked about Emmanuel quickly, let's talk about RJ Barrett. Which college did RJ Barrett play for? Was it A, North Carolina? Was it B, Duke? Was it C, Kentucky? Or was it D, Kansas? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.